Greg and Michelle, congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We just had a wonderful graduation for your two children. One came through and did a reading program and one a math program. And why did you guys consider LearningRx? What was frustrating? What was hard for your two children?
Yeah, well, as a homeschool mom, I had noticed my son really struggling with his ability to just even get to the place where he would start his math lesson. We'd have an hour-long conversation talking him off what I call the emotional cliff of despair, where he would really be frustrated. Before he even began, he just would come across something he didn't know automatically and kind of melt down.
Yeah.
And it was taking a lot of time out of our day, really, and he was frustrated, really frustrated. And my daughter was struggling with reading comprehension and also just sounding out words. The language component for her had never really been unlocked. And she struggled with just a lot of guessing of words instead of sounding out words. Yeah. So that was one of the things that she really worked.
And so you guys came in, we did an assessment, and what did that find?
Well, it was really eye-opening because, it was great because now I could understand why certain things happened. Why when I would leave the room and say, hey, I thought I told you X, Y, and Z, and none of those things happened. It's like, oh, your processing speed or your short-term memory or all of these things that now we're kind of crystal clear. It's like, this is why we're seeing all of these sort of behaviors play out. There's reasons behind it. It's not just you're being difficult or you're not listening. It's like, no, there's truly like a cognitive component to it that we didn't know about.
Yeah, and so before you knew about that, how were you handling these struggles? Were you just...
So it would be the talking off the ledge, trying to speak to them, and specifically our son, trying to speak to him and say, hey, we really have to do this. It's something that you have to do. And then it became almost an argument and threatening. Look, this is something you have to do, or you're going to get in trouble. You're going to lose your.
And that was all you knew because you didn't know he had the skill deficits, right? You thought it was behavioral.
We thought it was behavioral.
Yeah,
exactly. We thought it was behavioral, and we would see situations where, specifically for our son with math, where we would give him a problem, and it would.
The glaze.
It glazed over, and it was like
I call it the steel trap.
The gears were turning, but they weren't meshing. They were missing.
Yeah.
And so it was a terrible struggle. I would get phone calls from my wife during the day and say, "Hey, can you talk to your son? Because he's been obstinate for the last half an hour, and I can't get him to do anything." And I would say, "Son, look. When I come home, there's going to be consequences for these actions."
So it was more discipline.
It was discipline, and it was off target.
And then the cognitive assessment showed you that maybe him just coping with.
Right.
Absolutely.
It kind of revealed a lot about just his short-term memory, his processing speed, and reasons why. So we started to see, we were seeing this behavior. It kind of gave an explanation for it. And
the root cause.
This can be fixed.
Yeah.
This can be worked on. This can be addressed. And like that was kind of a revelation for us because up until then we thought we were just dealing with behavior.
So no amount of punishment would have taken care of the problem.
Well, and it's the revelation that for years that's the way that we learned.
Yeah.
Or the way we thought we learned. Oh, you're not working hard enough, or you're not behaving. You're not applying yourself. You're just being lazy. Those things are what stuck out to me most because I was the guy who was doling out the punishment.
Yeah.
And I really had to look backwards at that and go, I was not helping the situation at all.
So, you enrolled them.
Yeah, and so we enrolled in the fall, in like late November. And, Nick, the trainer, had noticed the same things I had seen, kind of just sort of the steel trap when you were presented with something difficult or hard or something that you didn't know automatically, this kind of resistance. But then he was able to really encourage Will to work through it and just look at the gains and look at improvements as the success and not necessarily, just positive reinforcement.
Believing in yourself.
Absolutely. And all these little improvements were the real successes, and not to look at just tackling a skill and calling that the success, but just really any little improvement,
day by day.
Any little improvement is gaining ground. And little by little we saw him changing at home. Now when he came across something difficult, it might be like a 5-minute conversation. I wouldn't say the reaction had like necessarily gone away.
Yes.
His automatic response was to still kind of be resistant and kind of like melt down a little, but then these weren't lasting an hour long. These were lasting 5 minutes, and he would be like, okay. He'd kind of come back to reason, and we just would work through it, and then 15 minutes later, we'd had the lesson done, and he would be fine. So his confidence grew as Nick worked with him throughout the 6 months. You know, his confidence and those reactions became less and less, to where, you know, a lot of times he was doing the lessons by himself. I'd say, hey, how is it going? Do you need me to kind of explain anything? Nope, I got it. How did you do? Did you score your own work? Yep. How did you do? I got them all right.
And as a homeschool mom, that's the holy grail.
It is.
That's what you want, to be able to work independently, to be able to like sort out something for themselves and flush it out and be okay and do well. And I saw that as the year progressed, him doing that more and more.
And we just went over his assessment results, and they were
phenomenal.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Really
and
great.
I think, you know, the thing that I look at, and we had 2 children in, you know, one had a bigger need than the other. We saw both of them improve significantly. I think the thing that I would say, and you probably already know it, is a child that is very gifted in some areas can be the most difficult in other areas, and that's the way it was with our son. There are certain areas that he was really gifted, and things came really easy to him.
Yeah.
But with these other things, when he didn't have the abilities and he didn't have the tools, they didn't work so well, and that wall got built up, and he didn't know how to get through it, and we didn't know how to penetrate.
So the key is targeting the deficit.
And then working on that skill, and as we saw that skill improve, so did his response and his attitude about everything. And so that
and
was
his
phenomenal.
confidence level.
Yeah, that was
That's
huge.
right.
For Maddie,
And your daughter.
For Maddie, her thing was different. Hers was a language barrier. She kind of always, phonetically, she was kind of struggling. She'd guess. When we come across words, she could not only the comprehension part of the reading, but also just even coming across
Decoding
words,
it.
Decoding it.
Yeah.
It was real tricky for her, and she was a perpetual guesser. She'd see the first couple letters in a word, and she'd stab at it. She'd just kind of throw words out there instead of really looking at the word. And her retention and her understanding and comprehension of what she was reading was just not really there. And so we saw her with this program be able to
did the
unlock.
reading one with her.
We did read program with her, and I was a kind of a co-trainer with Heather, who was phenomenal, and just kind of unlocking language for her and seeing her progress and sounding out words and not just stabbing at them or guessing at them, and able to like know what these letter blends meant.
Yes.
And kind of unpacking that every time, and to see her actually enjoy reading now, and to see her
And choose to read.
choosing to
She's
read.
choosing to read, and right now she's ahead of her brother in reading, which I never would have thought
He's a
happened.
real good reader.
He's an excellent reader, but at this point, she is on her 5th. She just finished her 4th book for the summer, and he's only on number 2, and she's just speeding her way through it.
And you gave another great improvement in the graduation about her reading
Oh, aloud. It
to
would be really embarrassing for her because, you know, she's 9 years old, and, you know, you're conscious of what other people think of you, and you also are aware of 2 of your deficits.
and you're guessing at words. That's pretty embarrassing.
And if you don't know what it means, and if it makes no sense in context, if you're stabbing at words and throwing out wrong words, people know it. It might be giggling. And
So what was she able to do?
She just recently was able to stand in front of a room of 100 people at a co-op convention where she was having to read her paper out loud in front of a room of strangers, and she read a 3-page paper in front of everyone.
She not only read it, she wrote it.
She wrote it. And
how'd that make her feel?
Read out loud. Very proud of herself. Very proud of herself.
As a parent, that's what it's all about, right? Being proud of your work. Yeah, confidence.
Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, those are great words. Any parting words of wisdom for any parents who maybe or homeschool that are considering?
I would just say it's worth it. It's worth the time. It's worth the effort.
And you guys drove from the Eastern Shore half the time, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
To come to Charlottesville.
It was no small feat, and but it was worth it.
So it was part